Scholar Commander Velrix stood before the Council of Seven, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. The holographic display behind him showed the advancing red tide of the Kresh swarm, consuming system after system. In 3 years, maybe less, they would reach the Verdani homeworld. "We are out of options," High Chancellor Moraveth said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons barely slow them down." Velrix stepped forward. There may be another way. He activated a different display, showing ancient text recovered from a precursor archive. 6 months ago, our expedition to the ruins of Kelthara Prime found these records. They reference something called the Human Protocol. The council leaned forward. Corinth, Velrix's research aide, stood nervously at the side of the room. She had spent countless nights helping decode the damaged files. "The precursors fought a war that nearly destroyed the galaxy," Velrix continued. "According to these fragments, they created a final solution. A weapon system so powerful, so effective, that it ended their war completely. They called it human." "What kind of weapon?" Moraveth asked. "The files are corrupted, but the descriptions are clear. Beings of terrible purpose. Creatures that could unmake entire civilizations. The precursors won their war with these weapons, then sealed them away. The records say they were too dangerous to exist alongside other species." Security Officer Drelak, standing at attention near the door, spoke up. "Where are they sealed?" Velrix changed the display again, showing a star map with a highlighted system at the edge of known space. The coordinates were hidden in the files. A quarantine world. The precursors built a barrier around the entire system to contain them. "For 10,000 years? Moraveth looked skeptical. "These weapons might not even function anymore." "Or they might be waiting," Velrix said. "The records include activation protocols. If we can reach the quarantine world and initiate the sequence, we might be able to deploy them against the Kresh." The council argued for an hour, but in the end, desperation won. Velrix was given a ship, a small crew, and 6 months to find a miracle. The journey took 43 days through deep space. Velrix spent most of that time studying the precursor files with Corinth. The more they read, the more disturbed they became. "These descriptions are strange," Corinth said one night in the research bay. "Listen to this. Humans possess an unusual cognitive capability that allows them to model the inner experiences of other beings with unprecedented accuracy. That does not sound like a weapon specification." "All the translations are rough," Velrix replied, though he felt the same unease. "The precursor language is difficult. Perhaps cognitive warfare? Psychological weapons?" Drelak joined them, checking his sidearm out of habit. "As long as they can stop the Kresh, I do not care what kind of weapons they are." When they finally reached the coordinates, the ship's sensors went wild. The quarantine barrier was there, a massive energy field surrounding the system, but it was inactive, dormant for thousands of years. "The barrier is down," Corinth reported from her station. "We can proceed directly to the planet." "Show me," Velrix ordered. The main screen displayed the third planet from the star. Velrix felt his breath catch. It was beautiful. Deep blue oceans covered most of the surface. White clouds swirled in atmospheric patterns. Green and brown land masses dotted the globe. "That cannot be right," Drelak said. "This is supposed to be a containment facility. That is a living world." Corinth ran deeper scans. "Commander, I am detecting massive biological activity. Cities, agriculture, energy signatures consistent with technological civilization. The population is estimated at over 8 billion. 8 billion weapons," Velrix whispered. "They are active. The system must maintain them somehow." "Or they maintain themselves," Drelak suggested. "Sir, if there are 8 billion combat units down there, we should proceed with extreme caution." Velrix agreed. They moved into high orbit and began scanning communications. That was when everything became truly confusing. The beings on the planet were talking to each other, not in battle coordination or tactical frequencies, but casual conversations. Corinth isolated a transmission from one of the largest cities. "They are arguing about something called traffic," she reported, bewilderment clear in her voice. "And someone named Minji is late for a meeting because of it." "Perhaps code phrases," Drelak offered, but he sounded uncertain. Velrix watched the data streams flowing across his screen. These weapons had names. They had jobs. They were worried about being late. "There," Corinth said, highlighting a region on the planet. "That city shows the highest concentration of research facilities. If we are going to make contact, that would be the logical place." The city was called Seoul. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, Velrix saw vast networks of roads, buildings that stretched toward the sky, and millions of individual life signs moving through it all. Every single one registered as human. They landed in an open area near what appeared to be a research complex. As the landing ramp lowered, Velrix felt his pulse quicken. After 10,000 years, they were about to meet the ultimate weapons of the Precursor Alliance. A small vehicle approached their ship. Two beings emerged. They walked on two legs like the Verdani, but their skin was smooth and varied in color. These two had dark hair and wore simple clothing. They carried no visible weapons. One of them, a female based on the translations, smiled and waved. "Hello!" she called out in a language the ship's translator struggled with before finding a match. "Welcome to Earth. I am Dr. Minji Park. This is my colleague Jinwoo Kang. We picked up your entry signature. Are you okay? That looked like a rough descent." Velrix walked down the ramp slowly, Corinth and Dralak flanking him. The human called Minji was still smiling. She looked concerned, not aggressive, not like a weapon at all. "We are fine," Velrix managed to say. "We are from the Verdani hegemony. We have traveled very far to find you." "That is wonderful," Jinwoo said enthusiastically. "First contact. This is incredible. Please, you must be tired. Would you like some tea? We have so many questions." Velrix looked at Corinth, who looked back with equal confusion. These were the terrible weapons that had ended the Precursor War. These friendly, smiling beings who offered tea. But the Precursor records could not be wrong. Somewhere beneath this pleasant exterior, the weapon system waited. They just had to find it. "Yes," Velrix said carefully. "We would like tea, and we have much to discuss." Minji's smile grew wider. "Perfect. Come with us. Oh, you are going to love Earth." As Velrix followed the humans toward their building, he wondered what he had truly discovered on this strange, beautiful world. The research facility was unlike any military installation Velrix had ever seen. The walls were painted in soft colors. Plants grew in containers by the windows. Humans moved through the hallways with relaxed postures, many of them smiling and greeting Minji and Jinwoo as they passed. Minji led them to a small room with comfortable chairs and a table. She prepared something called tea, pouring hot water over dried leaves. The smell was pleasant, almost calming. "So," Minji said as she sat down across from them, "what brings you all the way to Earth? You said you traveled very far." Velrix carefully pulled out a data tablet containing the precursor files. "We discovered ancient records. They led us here. The records speak of humans, of your purpose." Jinwoo leaned forward with interest. "Our purpose? That sounds mysterious." "The Precursor Alliance created you," Velrix said, watching their faces carefully. "You were designed as the ultimate weapon system to end their war. After you succeeded, they sealed you away because you were too dangerous." There was a moment of silence. Then Minji started laughing, not cruelly, but with genuine surprise and amusement. Jinwoo joined her, shaking his head. "I am sorry," Minji said, wiping her eyes. That is just so unexpected. We are not weapons. We are just people. Velrix felt frustration rising. The records are very clear. Look. He showed them images from the precursor files, the ancient text describing beings of terrible purpose. Jinwoo studied the images seriously. These files are over 10,000 years old, you said? Languages change a lot in that time. Translation errors happen. Context gets lost. The precursor sealed your entire world, Drelak interjected from where he stood by the door. They built a barrier that lasted 10,000 years. They did not do that for harmless beings. Min-Ji's expression grew thoughtful. That is true. But maybe they sealed us away for a different reason than you think. What reason? Corinth asked quietly. We should probably take this to the United Nations, Min-Ji said. This is bigger than Jinwoo and me. You need to meet more humans, see who we really are. Over the next 3 days, Velrix and his crew experienced Earth. Min-Ji and Jinwoo acted as guides, showing them Seoul. The humans lived in dense communities, millions of them in one city. They worked together in complex systems. They created art. They raised children. They argued about politics and laughed at entertainment and worried about their elderly parents. Velrix watched a human woman help an elderly man cross a busy street. He saw human children playing together in a park, shrieking with joy. He observed humans of different appearances working side by side without apparent conflict. And everywhere, humans kept asking them questions. Are you comfortable? Is the temperature okay? Do you need different food? Can we help you with anything? It was deeply unsettling. Velrix had commanded military vessels. He understood warriors and soldiers. But these constant small kindnesses felt like something else entirely. On the 3rd day, they met with the United Nations Assembly. Secretary General Ji-Hoon Song greeted them personally in a massive chamber where representatives from every human nation gathered. Welcome, Ji-Hoon said warmly. Min-Ji and Jinwoo have told us about your discoveries. Please, share what you have learned with all of us. Velrix stood before hundreds of humans and told them everything. About the Verdani hegemony, about the Kresh swarm that was destroying everything in its path, about finding the precursor records and following them here. We thought we would find dormant war machines, Velrix admitted, or genetic soldiers in stasis. Instead, we found you, living your lives. But the records cannot be completely wrong. The precursors sealed Earth for a reason. Ji-Hoon listened carefully, his face serious. May I see these records? Velrix transmitted the files. Human linguists and historians examined them for hours. The assembly waited patiently, talking quietly among themselves. Velrix noticed that whenever a human spoke, others listened carefully. They disagreed often, but without violence or anger. Finally, a woman named Dr. Hyejin Choi, an expert in ancient languages, stood to speak. I believe I understand what happened, she said. But you are not going to like it, Commander Velrix. Tell me, Velrix said. The precursors did not create humans as weapons of war, Hyejin explained. They created us as something else. Look at this phrase here. She highlighted a section of text. The standard translation is beings of terrible purpose, but in Old Precursor, the word translated as terrible can also mean overwhelming or powerful beyond measure, and purpose can also mean gift or capacity. What is the correct translation? Corinth asked. Beings of overwhelming capacity, Hyejin said, or possibly beings whose gift is beyond measure. The precursors were not describing weapons. They were describing abilities. Ji-Hoon stood and addressed Velrix directly. Commander, we have studied human history extensively. We know what makes us different from other species we have theorized about. Would you like to know? Yes, Velrix said, though he felt uncertain. Empathy, Ji-Hoon said simply. The ability to understand what another being is feeling. to imagine ourselves in their situation, to care about their suffering even when they are not part of our family or tribe. All social species have some form of that, Drelak objected. Not like humans, Minji said gently. We can empathize across vast differences. We can feel compassion for beings we have never met, for species that do not even exist yet. It is our greatest strength and our deepest weakness. Velrix thought about the past 3 days. The constant questions about comfort, the concern for their well-being, the way humans seemed genuinely interested in making them feel welcome. The precursors were destroying themselves in an endless war, Hyajin continued. They were trapped in cycles of revenge and hatred. Based on these records, I believe they created humans to break that cycle, to be beings who could understand all sides, who could make peace imaginable. So you ended their war, Corinth said softly. Not with weapons. With understanding, Ji-hoon confirmed, with the ability to see every perspective, to find common ground, to make former enemies see each other as people rather than threats. Velrix felt something shift in his understanding. And then they sealed you away because they were ashamed. They needed you to save them. And they could not accept that. Or, Minji suggested, they were afraid of becoming dependent on us, of losing the ability to solve their own problems. So they corrupted the records, made us seem like dangerous weapons, and sealed Earth so no one would ever use humans that way again. Until we came, Velrix said bitterly, looking for weapons to deploy against the Kresh. You came looking for hope, Minji corrected gently. You came because your people are dying and you need help. There is no shame in that. Ji-hoon looked at Velrix steadily. Tell us about the Kresh. Everything you know. Their behavior, their patterns, why they expand, why they attack. Because they are conquerors, Drelak said. They want to consume everything. Maybe, Ji-hoon said. Or maybe they have reasons you have not discovered yet. Have you ever tried talking to them? The question hung in the air. In all the years of fighting the Kresh, in all the desperate strategies and brutal battles, no one had ever asked that simple question. Have you tried talking to them? Velrix looked at the hundreds of human faces watching him with genuine concern, with hope, with that overwhelming capacity for understanding. No, he admitted. We have never tried. Then perhaps, Ji-hoon said with a small smile, that is where we should start. The days that followed transformed everything Velrix thought he understood about humans. The United Nations did not prepare for war. Instead, they prepared for something the Verdani had never even considered. They prepared to listen. Dr. Sumin Choi led the linguistics team. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile. She gathered experts from every human nation, specialists in communication, psychology, biology, and mathematics. They crowded into a massive research center in Geneva, working around the clock. Show us everything you know about Kresh communication, Sumin said to Velrix on the first day. Velrix displayed recordings of Kresh signals, the harsh, rapid pulses that preceded every attack, the strange harmonics in their ship broadcasts, the electromagnetic patterns that seemed to coordinate their swarm movements. This is all we have, Velrix explained. We have tried to decode it for years. There is no structure we can recognize, no patterns that match any known language. Sumin listened to the recordings 3 times, her head tilted in concentration. Then she started asking questions. What is the average temperature of Kresh space? What is their atmosphere composition? Do they communicate in their home environment the same way they communicate in space? What is their biological structure? How do they perceive time? What is their life cycle? Velrix felt overwhelmed. I do not understand why these things matter. We need to stop them, not study them. To stop them, we need to understand them, Sumin said patiently. Language is not just about words. It is about how a species experiences reality. If we want to talk to the Kresh, we need to think like them first. Corinth, who had been studying human methods carefully, spoke up. We have biological scans from crash bodies we recovered, and environmental data from the systems they occupy. Perfect, Su-min said, her eyes lighting up. Let us start there. While the linguists worked, other humans prepared in different ways. Engineer Tae-Yang Park led a team building new kinds of ships. Velrix watched with growing confusion as the designs took shape. These vessels have minimal weapons, Dralak observed, studying the blueprints. The hulls are incredibly thick, but there is almost no offensive capability. Tae-Yang nodded cheerfully. That is correct. These ships are not designed to fight. They are designed to survive. Survive what? Velrix asked. Crash attacks, Tae-Yang said simply. If we are going to communicate with them, we need to withstand their initial assault. These ships can take massive damage and keep functioning. They will hold position no matter what. Why would you build ships that cannot fight back? Dralak demanded. Because fighting back would end the conversation before it starts, Tae-Yang explained. We need to show the Kresh that we are not a threat, that we are trying to communicate, not attack. If we shoot back, we are just another enemy. The logic was insane by Verdani standards. But Velrix was beginning to understand that human logic operated on different principles. They thought in terms of bridges instead of walls. In another facility, teams of psychologists worked on understanding Kresh behavior patterns. Dr. Jung-Ho Kim led this effort, analyzing decades of Kresh attack data. Look at this, Jung-Ho said, showing Velrix a map of Kresh expansion. They always move in the same direction, always toward galactic core regions with higher stellar density. They avoid sparse areas even when those areas have fewer defenders. They want resource-rich territory, Velrix said. Or, Jung-Ho suggested, they need specific environmental conditions. What if they are not conquerors? What if they are looking for something? That is absurd, Dralak said. They have killed millions, destroyed hundreds of worlds. Yes, Jung-Ho agreed sadly. But why? Species do not commit genocide for fun. There is always a reason: fear, desperation, misunderstanding. If we can find that reason, maybe we can address it. Velrix wanted to argue, but he remembered the past weeks. He had come to Earth expecting weapons and found people. Maybe the humans were right to question assumptions. 3 weeks into the preparation, Su-min called an urgent meeting. Her team had been working non-stop, surviving on something called coffee and barely sleeping. But her face showed excitement. We have a breakthrough, she announced. The Kresh are not using language the way we understand it. They are using something closer to shared experience broadcasts, emotional states encoded in electromagnetic patterns. She played a Kresh transmission through a new interpretation system. Instead of meaningless noise, Velrix heard something that made his blood run cold. Fear, pure, overwhelming fear in every signal. They are terrified, Corinth whispered. Constantly, Su-min confirmed. Every transmission is soaked in fear and urgency. The patterns suggest a species in crisis, not conquering, fleeing. Fleeing from what? Velrix asked. That is what we need to ask them, Su-min said. The final piece came from an unexpected source. Young Sik Min was a diplomat, a human who had spent his life negotiating peace between conflicting groups. He volunteered to lead the mission to Kresh space. Velrix met with him privately. You understand this will be dangerous, Velrix said. The Kresh may kill you the moment they see you. Young Sik smiled calmly. They might, but someone has to try. Weapons destroy problems, Commander. We solve them. How can you be so calm about facing death? Because I believe that most conflicts come from misunderstanding, Young Sik said. The Kresh and the Verdani have been killing each other for years, but neither of you truly understands the other. You see them as mindless destroyers. They probably see you as obstacles to survival. What if you are both wrong? And if you are wrong? If they are just killers? Young Sik was quiet for a moment. Then at least we tried. At least we offered them a choice. That matters. Velrix thought about Moraveth and the Council of Seven, about the billions of Verdani waiting for salvation. He had come to Earth expecting a weapon he could point at the Kresh and fire. Instead, he found beings who wanted to understand the enemy. It seemed like madness. But he had also seen what human understanding could do, how it could transform perspectives, how it could make the impossible seem possible. "How long before your fleet is ready?" Velrix asked. 2 weeks, Young Sik said. "The ships are almost complete. Su-Min's team has prepared communication packages in 17 different formats based on what we think Kresh perception can process." "We are as ready as we can be." "I will inform my government," Velrix said. "They will think we are insane." "Probably," Young Sik agreed. "But are they satisfied with the current approach? Is the war going well?" Velrix had no answer to that. The war was going terribly. The Verdani were losing slowly but certainly. Traditional approaches had failed completely. "You keep asking why the Kresh expand," Velrix said slowly. "What if the answer is terrible? What if they are just evil?" Young Sik met his eyes steadily. "In my experience, Commander, evil is rare. Scared, desperate, and misunderstood are much more common. We will find out which one the Kresh are. Together." 2 weeks later, a combined fleet of human and Verdani ships prepared to depart Earth. The vessels looked strange, more like floating fortresses than warships. They carried no armies, no massive weapons, just communication equipment and the fragile hope that understanding might achieve what force could not. Velrix stood on the bridge of his ship, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. Beside him, Young Sik studied star charts of Kresh territory. "There is a Kresh fleet here," Velrix said, pointing to a nearby system. "They are preparing to attack a Verdani colony. If we are going to make contact, that would be the place." "Then that is where we go," Young Sik said calmly. As they entered faster-than-light travel, Velrix wondered if he was leading these humans to their deaths, or if he was about to witness something no Verdani had ever seen. A weapon that made war obsolete. The Kresh fleet hung in space like a dark swarm. Thousands of organic-looking ships clustered around the Verdani colony of Theral 7. Velrix watched them on the main display, feeling the old fear rise in his chest. He had seen Kresh swarms before. He knew what came next. "They have detected us," Corinth reported from sensors. "They are changing formation, moving to intercept." Young Sik stood calmly at the center of the human command ship, surrounded by his team. Su-Min was at communications. Tai Yang monitored the ship's defensive systems. Young Ho watched biological sensors, trying to read Kresh emotional states from their movement patterns. "Begin the transmission," Young Sik ordered. The human ships broadcast on every frequency Su-Min's team had identified as possible Kresh reception channels. The message was simple. Encoded in electromagnetic patterns that mimicked the emotional broadcasts the Kresh themselves used. "We are here. We mean no harm. We want to understand." The Kresh fleet accelerated toward them. Velrix felt his hands grip the edge of his console. On the human ships, no one moved to weapons. They simply held position. "First wave incoming," Drelak announced, his voice tight with tension. "Impact in 30 seconds. The Kresh attacks came like living things. Bioplasma that ate through shields, swarm missiles that moved with insect intelligence, energy weapons that pulsed with the same rhythm as a heartbeat. The human ships absorbed the assault. Their thick hulls buckled and burned but held. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. But Young Sik simply nodded to Su-Min. "Keep broadcasting," he said. "We are here. We mean no harm. We want to understand." The second wave hit harder. A human ship lost its engines and began drifting. Another took damage to its main reactor. Velrix watched crew members working frantically to control the damage. but no one fired back. No one broke formation. "This is insane," Drelak muttered. "We have to return fire." "No," Young Sik said firmly. "We hold position. We show them we are serious." "They are killing us," Drelak shouted. "They are scared of us," Young Ho said, eyes locked on his displays. "Look at their formation patterns. This is defensive aggression. They think we are here to attack them." "We are just floating here getting destroyed," Drelak protested. "Exactly," Young Sik said. "We are showing them something they have never seen before. Beings who enter their space but do not attack. Who take their fire but do not retaliate. Who keep trying to communicate even while dying." The attacks continued for 3 hours. The human ships weathered impossible damage. 2 were completely disabled, their crews evacuating to other vessels. The remaining ships looked like they had been through a war, because they had, but they kept broadcasting. "We are here. We mean no harm. We want to understand." Velrix had never felt so helpless. Every instinct screamed at him to fight back, to defend himself, but he watched Young Sik standing calm and steady, and he forced himself to trust this human method. On the 4th hour, something changed. The Kresh attacks began coming slower, less coordinated. The emotional signature Young Ho was tracking showed confusion mixing with the fear. "They are hesitating," Jung Ho said. "This does not match any behavior pattern they have seen before." "Keep broadcasting," Young Sik said. Sumin modified the message slightly, adding more complexity now that they had the Kresh attention. "We are here. We mean no harm. We want to understand. We hear you. We see your fear. We want to help." The attacks stopped completely. The Kresh fleet held position, thousands of ships floating in silence. Inside those ships, Velrix imagined beings trying to understand what they were seeing, trying to process the impossible. "They are sending something," Sumin said, her voice shaking with excitement. "It is not an attack. It is a signal. They are trying to respond." The transmission came through their interpretation system. It was chaotic, full of overlapping emotional patterns. Fear was still dominant, but now mixed with confusion, curiosity, and something that might have been hope. Young Ho worked frantically to parse the meaning. "They are asking why we are here, why we do not attack, why we keep talking." "Tell them we want to understand," Young Sik said. "Tell them we see their fear, and we want to know why they are afraid." The exchange took hours. Each message required careful encoding and interpretation. The Kresh seemed unused to this kind of communication. Their language was built for sharing immediate emotional states, not complex abstract concepts. But slowly, painfully, understanding began to emerge. Velrix watched Young Sik work with infinite patience. When the Kresh sent confused responses, he simplified. When they showed fear, he sent reassurance. When they pulled back, he waited without pushing. This was what the precursors had created. Not warriors, not weapons, but beings with unlimited patience for understanding, with the ability to see past fear and anger to the confused, scared creatures underneath. After 18 hours of continuous communication, Su Min received a longer transmission. Her hands shook as she decoded it. "They are asking permission to send a representative," she said. "A queen. She wants to talk to us directly." "Tell her yes," Young Sik said immediately. "Tell her we would be honored." The Kresh ship that approached was unlike their war vessels. It was smaller, more delicate. It docked with the human command ship carefully, almost timidly. Velrix and his crew joined Young Sik in the meeting chamber they had prepared. The Kresh Queen was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. She communicated through color changes in her skin and electromagnetic pulses from specialized organs. Su Min's translation system struggled but managed to convey meaning, fear, so much fear. The Queen was absolutely terrified. "We are not here to harm you," Young Sik said gently, Sumin translating into patterns the queen could understand. We want to know why you are here, why you are fighting. The queen's response came in waves of color and emotion. Sumin translated, tears streaming down her face as the meaning became clear. Their home dimension is collapsing, Sumin said. Some kind of fundamental breakdown in the structure of space itself. The Kresh have been forced into our dimension. They are refugees. They need space to survive, but every species they have encountered has attacked them immediately. They thought they had to conquer or die. Velrix felt the universe tilt. All this time, all the death and destruction, and the Kresh were just running from annihilation. They are not conquerors, Corinth whispered. They are survivors. The queen sent another message, her colors showing desperate hope. She was asking if there was any possibility of peace, of finding space where her people could live without fighting. She was asking if they had been wrong to assume all other species would be enemies. Young Sik smiled, the expression full of warmth and determination. Tell her yes. Tell her there is another way. Tell her we will help her find it. The queen's colors shifted to something Sumin struggled to translate, relief so profound it was almost painful. Hope after endless fear, gratitude beyond measure. Velrix watched Young Sik embrace first contact protocol with a species that had been killing his potential allies for years. Watched him offer help without hesitation or conditions. Watched him see past all the violence to the terrified refugees underneath. This was the weapon the precursors had created. Not force, not destruction, but understanding so complete that it made enemies impossible. And for the first time since the Kresh appeared, Velrix allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was hope. The chamber was filled with beings from 30 different species. Verdani, Kresh, humans, and representatives from across the hegemony crowded around the massive conference table. 3 months ago, this meeting would have been impossible. Now, it was the most important gathering in galactic history. Velrix stood at the front of the room, barely recognizing himself. He had come to Earth as a military commander searching for weapons. Now he was helping to build something that had no name in Verdani language. Peace based on understanding rather than fear. The proposal is simple, Young Sik said, addressing the assembly. The Kresh need space to survive. The galaxy has that space. We just need to allocate it properly. You want us to give them territory? High Chancellor Moraveth demanded through the communication link from the Verdani homeworld. After everything they have destroyed? I want you to help refugees find a home, Young Sik corrected gently. That is different. The Kresh Queen, whose name was Jathik in the closest human pronunciation, sent a pulse of color and emotion. Sumin translated. She says the Kresh will accept any conditions, any limitations. They just want to stop running, stop fighting. Dr. Minji Park, who had been studying galactic surveys for weeks, activated a star map. There are 16,000 uninhabited systems in the galactic arm that match Kresh environmental requirements. They are empty. No species claims them. No one lives there. We propose the Sanctuary Accord. These systems become Kresh territory. In exchange, the Kresh cease all hostile actions and join the galactic community as full members. You make it sound so simple, Moraveth said bitterly. They killed millions of our people. Because they thought they had no choice, Jihun Song said from his position beside Young Sik. Because every species they met responded with immediate violence. Because they were desperate and terrified. That does not excuse what they did, but it explains it. And explanation gives us a path forward. Velrix spoke up. High Chancellor, I have spent 3 months working with the humans and the Kresh. I have seen Jathik mourn her fallen warriors. I have watched Kresh children learn to grow food in environments that do not collapse around them. They are not monsters. They are just people trying to survive. Listen to yourself, Moraveth said. 3 months with the humans and you sound like them. Yes, Velrix agreed. Maybe that is not a bad thing. The debate raged for hours. Moraveth and the hardliners wanted guarantees, security measures, and military oversight. The Kresh wanted assurance they would not be attacked the moment they let their guard down. And the humans kept patiently mediating, finding common ground, making understanding possible. Finally, Jung-Ho Kim proposed the monitoring system that changed everything. Mixed species stations at every Kresh settlement. Humans, Verdani, and Kresh living together, working together, ensuring mutual trust through constant contact. If we are together, Jung-Ho explained, we cannot dehumanize each other. We cannot see each other as enemies when we share meals and raise children in the same communities. The Sanctuary Accord passed with support from 70% of the hegemony species. Not everyone agreed. Some Verdani felt betrayed. Some Kresh remained suspicious. But enough beings on both sides chose hope over fear. The first Kresh colony was established in a system the humans named New Dawn. Velrix attended the opening ceremony with Corinth and Draylak. They watched Kresh builders construct organic structures that grew from the ground like massive flowers. Human engineers helped adapt the technology for local conditions. Verdani observers documented everything, still wary but committed to trying. Jothik approached Velrix during the celebration. Her colors showed gratitude mixed with something like wonder. She wants to thank you, Sumin translated. She says you could have brought weapons to destroy her people. Instead, you brought something much more dangerous to her old way of thinking. You brought hope. I did not bring hope, Velrix said. The humans did. You brought them to us, Sumin said with a smile. That counts. Velrix watched human children playing with young Kresh nearby. The species looked nothing alike. The children could not speak each other's languages. But they played together anyway, laughing and chasing each other through the alien grass. A year ago, their parents had been killing each other. Now their children played together. That night, Velrix found young Sik standing alone, watching the settlement from a hillside. The human diplomat looked tired but content. I need to understand something, Velrix said, joining him. When I first came to Earth, I wanted to use humans as weapons, to point you at my enemies and let you destroy them. You could have refused. You could have sent us away. Why did you help? Young Sik was quiet for a long moment. Because you were scared beings looking for hope. That is not something to turn away. That is something to answer. But the Kresh had killed millions of your potential allies. You had no connection to the Verdani. You could have stayed neutral. Staying neutral when beings are suffering is a choice too, Young Sik said. Not acting is still an action. We chose to try to help because that is what we do. That is what the precursors created us to do, whether they meant to or not. Do you ever wish you could just stop? Just let other species solve their own problems? Young Sik smiled sadly. All the time. Empathy is exhausting. Caring about everyone is impossible. But it is also beautiful. It connects us to every being in the universe. It makes us part of something larger than ourselves. Velrix looked out at the settlement, at the impossible peace taking root in what had been a war zone. The precursors were right to be afraid of you, not because you are dangerous, because you make everything different. You make violence feel wrong even when it is necessary. You make hatred feel small and petty. We are not perfect, Young Sik said. Humans have our own history of violence and hatred. We have made terrible mistakes. We still make them. But we keep trying to do better, to understand more, to build bridges instead of walls. 6 months later, Velrix returned to Earth for the official ceremony lifting the ancient quarantine. The barrier that had surrounded the system for 10,000 years was permanently disabled. Earth was officially part of the galactic community. Minji found him before the ceremony began. How does it feel? She asked. You came here looking for weapons and found something completely different. I came here looking for a way to win a war, Velrix said. Instead, I learned how to end one. That is better than winning. During the ceremony, Ji-Hoon Song addressed the assembled representatives from hundreds of worlds. The precursors sealed Earth because they were afraid of what humans represented. Not our capacity for violence, but our capacity for understanding. They feared that if humanity joined the galaxy, nothing would ever be the same. He paused, looking out at the diverse crowd. Beings from dozens of species, many of whom had been enemies months before, now standing together. They were right, Ji-Hoon continued. Nothing is the same. The Verdani and the Kresh are building new settlements together. Species that have never cooperated are working on joint projects. Old conflicts are being re-examined. Old hatreds are being questioned, not because humans forced anyone, but because we offered a different possibility. The possibility that understanding is stronger than force, that empathy is more powerful than weapons. The ceremony ended with a Kresh traditional blessing, translated into 50 languages. Jothic's colors showed hope and joy as she spoke of the future her people now had. A future without fear, without endless running, without war. Velrix stood with Corinth and Dralak, watching the celebration. Humans danced with Verdani, who danced with Kresh, who danced with beings from across the galaxy. We really were sent to discover an ancient weapon, Corinth said quietly. Yes, Velrix agreed, just not the weapon we expected. The weapon was not violence. It was not force or destruction or conquest. The weapon was the simple, overwhelming capacity to see another being suffering and choose to care. To understand across impossible differences, to build peace from the ruins of war. The precursors had created humans to end their own conflict. They had succeeded beyond imagining. And now, 10,000 years later, humanity was doing exactly what they were designed to do, making war obsolete by making understanding possible. Velrix watched Minji teaching a group of young Kresh about human agriculture, watched young Sik planning the next mediation mission to a conflict zone on the other side of the galaxy, watched humans simply being what they were created to be, bridges between impossible distances, proof that empathy was the strongest force in the universe. And Velrix understood, finally, why the precursors had been so afraid, not of what humans could destroy, but of what they could build. A galaxy where differences were celebrated instead of feared, where conflicts were resolved instead of won, where every being, no matter how alien, was seen as worthy of understanding. The ancient weapon called human had been activated at last, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same.